Chicken's very good.
He's in Colonial Acres, but he's taking a deal. He's taking a Pentagon job.
We're live.
Are we live? We're live. Welcome to the February 21st Planning Commission meeting. Call to order. We have a quorum. We have everybody present. That's always a good news. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. If Andy could lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Andy. We're going to deviate from the meeting agenda to accommodate a schedule of our city engineer. So I would like to ask Mr. Scott St. John to lead us in this Avoca Road, Riley Creek Road drainage presentation.
Production, if you can go to the computer, please.
All right, Mary's going to get us to the start of the presentation here. Just to brief you, there we go, Mary, thank you. Just to brief you, Planning Commission had presented to staff a number of questions about a year ago in January of 2021 to review some drainage issues at Avoca Riley Creek Road, address some facts related to the planning that was involved, related to calculations, the drainage plans for Emerald Meadows, Pinnacle Point, some of the areas that drain towards fairways and on down in that drainage area. So I had compiled the information. So again, this really is just addressing some of the comments or questions that was asked directly from the Planning Commission to staff. And to get you oriented, we are, oh Mary, I'm trying to find a pointer. It's against the white, so it's not going to show up. But anyway, the blue being Normandy Lake, Bobo Creek, which extends down towards what you see in red there is calling out the intersection of the split of Avoca and Riley Creek Road. So immediately to the east or to the right side of the red, there is fairways. I'll get to a closer view here. So again, you see the white, the intersection of Avoca Riley. I have noted here 2106 Avoca Road, which is the address of the resident that had asked for information that we then met with about 2 months ago related to this presentation, went through it, stepped through a number of questions, but understand Planning Commission wanted to view this. So what we have at the Y intersection, the drainage area that drains towards the fairways development is about 40 acres, more or less. It comes through the culvert, a 15-inch culvert that is on the Avoca side that then continues to drain through fairways. So that roughly 40 acres, which is about 37 acres on the west side of Riley Creek Road, 5 acres at the Y itself, and that area again drains towards 2106 Avoca Road. That is the house that it tops the roadway periodically of Avoca Road and drains towards that house. You'll see later on the drainage plan of the entire fairways area that shows the drainage plan of fairways and some of the fill. So again, we are, it's not showing up. You see the Y in, can't see it, through the wooded area there, the triangle. There is a regulated stream that passes through that drains from west to east that crosses through the triangular area. You'll see to the west of Riley Creek Road, the undeveloped tract, and that's about roughly 60 area, 60-acre area. Of that, about 40 acres drains to the east. And then the drainage meanders through fairways, which again is not necessarily the blue line, but it follows the black line that routes through. And this is just to give an aerial view of the area in general. So I have highlighted in blue on this slide. This is the tax map, the 2106 Avoca Road. The area, you see the large undeveloped tract to the west there. That's where the 40 acres drains through. This shows that really the only large undeveloped area that is to be developed out that drains through fairways is this large tract on the west side. Pretty much everything else either has been developed, or some of the other undeveloped tracts to the north side of Emerald Meadows, those drain northward and then eastward. They do not drain through fairways. So this becomes important as we progress. That large undeveloped area there is what we know that we have to control. We have to deal with the stormwater in a very delicate manner when that property develops, so that we can increase time of concentrations, hold water back, slow down the flow as it drains towards fairways. So keep that in mind as we progress here. Again, specific questions that were asked were, what is the layout plan? What was the plan, grading plan, drainage plan for Emerald Meadows? Emerald Meadows, and I'm sorry, the pointer not working here. Emerald Meadows has two large detention basins. So you see in circular areas here, a lot of the area, I guess there's nothing else I can do as far as pointing. Okay. Two large detention basins. That's the main drain that cuts through from Jennings Point. It drains through northward, or I'm sorry, eastward. This is rotated. Two large detention basins for Emerald Meadows, a large detention basin for the Woodlands, which is the property that's starting to develop here on the left-hand side of the drain. And then there's a large detention basin on the other side that handles the Pinnacle Point development. So that was presented in 2006 as a plan that dates back, and then it was kind of stalled out with the economic times during a period, and then as we all know, it's taken off and developed over the recent years. But this plan here was presented, and it's dated 2006. Woodlands, so as I talked about a second ago, this is the property that they're developing now, the frontage lots onto onto Riley Creek Road, and the large detention basin that's planned there. We have all of this as one summary page out of the detention calculations for that development, where they determine pre-development runoff rates, post-development, post-discharge, and then routed through the detention basin. And it all comes down to over-detaining and making sure that they don't exceed the pre-development rates with the post-development discharge rates. And then as I taught through at our series, I know a couple of you were at the stormwater program last week, 2 of 3, we taught through in detail this pre versus post discharge and how the city requires the developers to detain for the 2 through 25-year storm event and to handle the 100-year storm event. Most engineers, and it's been the same engineer on all of these developments that we talked about, or that we are showing you now, he actually detains for the 100-year storm event. So he exceeds his drainage requirements by detaining for the 100-year. Pinnacle Point, as we talked about, which fronts Avoca Road, the large detention basin that's developed, and that basin was actually installed as a part of Emerald Meadows. And then as time has progressed, they've got to Pinnacle Point. We made the developer go in and remove some silt and get it back up to the design that it was intended to be, because over a number of years there had been some siltation. So that is in place. Again, they submitted drainage calculations, detention calculations, all of that is kind of summarized here in their plans. The Flint Rock subdivision, which was developed by Joe Denby, and it's 7, 8 lots there fronting Avoca Road. It also has some detention area that detains on the northerly portion. There's about 3 lots to the south that do bypass and do not discharge to the detention basin. But this basin handles the majority of the lots. And again, they handle through the 100-year storm event for detention. At the time, in 2001, February 2001, as we prepared this presentation, developer Alan Howard was looking at developing the property in the triangle. And since then, of course, the city has acquired that triangular area. But at the time, there were 4 lots that were proposed in that triangle, and then a common area right at the tip of the triangle that was not a part of the lots. But at the time this plan was presented, the regulated stream you can see in the hatched area at the top of the plan that then drains over to the 15-inch culvert and on through fairways. Again, here was his proposed detention calculations, again, for the 2 through 100-year storm event. And as we said, this kind of went away at the time because it was purchased by the city. So, in summary, getting back to that large tract that's not developed at this point, we know that there's a large runoff that comes off of that tract, comes through an 18-inch culvert on Riley Creek Road, then through a 15-inch culvert on Avoca Road. It hits the house at 2106, and that's the point that it does a number of rerouting. It has some angular bends and then progresses on back through the development. The culvert there at Avoca Road we know is undersized, but we know if we go and upsize that culvert, then it would only send more water through. And we know that the solution to that is to, on that large undeveloped tract, to over-detain on it and deal with our runoff, make that developer put in a series of detention basins that are staged through the development that slow the water down and step progressively through the development. And I don't know, Mary, if our presentation went away here. Is he going to pull it back up? Okay. So I went ahead last year and ran some analysis of that drainage basin to look at right now what is happening and kind of assess the discharge. And so we're seeing about 40 cubic feet per second, 40 CFS that drains through. That's a large number. Well exceeds 18-inch pipe capacities, 12-inch pipe capacities in that area. So, we know we are dealing with that number. We know that it tops the roadway of Avoca Road on heavy rain events. But we understand in looking at this that we have to detain on that west side. Through this, I've realized that the lots at the triangular portion, the 4 lots, the roughly 5 acres, which includes several acres of lots in Emerald Meadows and then in Flint Rock that are not being detained right now, that we are still with meeting the pre and post numbers for that development. The trick on this is to let that few acres go and over detain on the other side of the road. And I'm not going to get into the numbers, but they're available if y'all would like a copy of the calculations that I've run through here. And they're pretty lengthy, assessed
the drainage area, assess the culverts that are in that area to look at what we might need to do. That brings up at the triangular portion, we know that the city has acquired it. They've authorized us to go in, start survey work, and then look at what we might can do in that triangular area to possibly detain. We know it's a small area compared to the 40 acres on the west side of the road. So we're kind of limited on what we can do in that triangular area, but maybe we can create in the smaller events a little bit of benefit to help those downstream residents. The larger events, we're probably going to again exceed the pipe capacity of roadway, top the roadway, and send it on across. But in the small events, maybe we can provide some amount of benefit on that triangular portion that the city owns. So this right here is just a graph of the blue area is the 5 acres that's not contained, that's in the triangle. The green or black, darker, is the 40 acres on the west side of the road, and we're looking at Q, the flow, in relation to time on the bottom. And when you combine those peaks, then you get what is in red. That would be the hydrograph for the combined discharge area. And what we're looking at is a very similar peak between the two combined. And what we want to do is to bring the green or black down by way of stormwater detention. We want to move it way out to the right so that we're slowing the discharge rate down. Therefore, the total peak, the combined, will drop way down at the point that we're able to get that detention in on that west side. So that's the long-term goal. That's where we really get the benefit. So moving into the Fairways Phase 2 subdivision, the drainage plan, and this dates back to the late 80s, early 90. There's a plat that's dated at 89, 90 time frame, and this is the final plat. So, sorry, the pointer is not going to work, but the triangular portion is at the very top of the plat. So from the triangle moving to the right, there are 5 lots. The 4th lot down is 2106 above the road. And to give you an idea, next slide, the drainage plan. You see the circular area around that 4th lot. Again, I apologize for the clicker here, not working the pointer, but that plan that was prepared in '88 required a number of areas within Fairways to be filled and raise the building pad up so that the drainage that progresses through the lot is not directed straight to the house, and that they're rerouted around areas. And so you can see a number of dark circular areas where it was intended for that building pad to be raised up. Lost it here. Get back to it in a second. Some of these areas fill was placed. We know that I was out on the lots that are to the most to the right here, and we know that fill went in on those lots, but fill did not go in on the 2106 Boca Road. So unfortunately, the drainage comes across the roadway, hits that ditch line. It does follow the ditch line around and progress around, but in large events, when it tops over, it does drain towards the house, towards the garage, and causes a problem for that resident there. So with that lot being, that house being constructed low, we're kind of caught on a number of options that we have to do improvements. The main thing that we can do is to hold that water back and contain it on that 60-acre tract on the other side. So you had asked, one of your questions you had asked for, is there an overall plan to deal with the drainage and fairways? And for that specific area, that is really the overall plan, is to deal with it from an off-site standpoint. There's things that the city has done, such as raising the berm along the ditch line on Avoca Road over years to try and just help that property owner deal with water when it tops over the roadway. But again, there's only so much we can do with raising that berm up in large events. When it tops over, it does drain towards the house. So that's a tough area, but we know we'll deal with it and reap the big benefit by dealing with detention on that 60-acre tract. So I'm going to pause. Got about 5 minutes. I ran through these slides quickly, and be glad to take any questions, specific questions.
Any questions for Scott?
I don't want to oversimplify. So my understanding is the problem is the amount of water is larger than the capacity of the pipes that's topping the road and flowing into their property.
It's a little more in depth than that. You know, every amount of off-site drainage area generates runoff. So you have a large area that's draining to an area that has 18-inch and 15-inch culverts there. And again, the city has elected over time they could upsize those culverts to prevent it from topping the roadway, but that then prevents it from staging as much as possible on that left or west side. So in the triangle, in the natural pond that's all on that undeveloped property, you know, we're forcing it as much as possible to back up into that area before it reaches a peak that then begins to top over the roadway. So it's really not just undersized culverts. It's a large drainage area that's naturally discharging what it is going to discharge.
I think you answered my second, is can we make the culverts bigger? But I think you answered that.
Yes.
Let me see if I can get this out of my head. In general, you know, we're saying that, you know, this area received quite a bit of development from, like, I guess 89 to the present day, with a pretty good stall there. What does the city do in general within civil engineering to ensure that, like, this is handled from like a big picture kind of thing, like, you know, the 30-year, 40-year plans of developments? Because there's probably other places in the city I can't think of. Well, maybe out Lidford Mill or something like that, where we're going to see quite a bit of development happening over the next 10, 15 years. At what point does the city step in and say, "Hey, we're gonna really, if we cut all these trees and we reroute all this stormwater and stuff like that, we're going to have a problem, and then we're going to be looking at this guy that owns 40 acres or something like that is like, hey, you're going to have to do this before you develop your property." Because the guy that has the 40 acres here, he can come in tomorrow and say, hey, I wanted to put however many houses on it, and this board is going to say, yeah, sure, do it. And it's going to cause even more problems for those residents as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I guess the bottom line, yes, development occurred for many years up through, and then, of course, is accelerating now. But yes, there are a lot of developments that preceded the stormwater regulations that really first got implemented in about the 1997 timeframe, and then another set of criteria that were state mandated that, you know, came about in that 2004 timeframe with our stormwater permitting process. So before that, you have a lot of developments that really didn't have stormwater detention, really didn't size culverts properly, and a number of things. I mean, that plan that you saw there, that grading plan, drainage plan, that was prepared by the surveyor. That was not prepared by a registered engineer. So you have a number of developments that unfortunately, you know, are not up to the current standards. So what we do now, of course, we implemented requirements and we enforce those. But the biggest thing is we, you know, we look out for when development comes through. We assess the downstream drainage conditions. We look at that
development, do we force some over detention? Do we do some measures to make them elongate the time of concentration? And look at, that drainage area. And I know you're asking from the big picture standpoint, do we have a master drainage plan of the city as a whole? No, we don't. We know those specific areas that flood. We know where they are. Of course, a lot of times you can track them by 100-year floodplain. You can just look at the floodplain map, know where those areas are, and know it's a sensitive area. So we have to plan in more detail above that. But, the city has not ever funded an overall drainage plan. It's just, we're forced to go in now and look at specific areas and plan for those. So, fortunately, there's a lot of experience at the public works level that have been with the city for year after year, so they know those flooding areas. They have done flood studies in specific areas, such as Broderick Street and downstream. There has been studies that, like Neil Schaefer Engineering did a large study there. Of course, they take dollars to do studies, but then they take dollars to implement those plans. So in general, without having an overall master drainage plan, yes, we have to rely on knowing the area and then working to review upstream to make sure we're not causing problems downstream.
Okay, so that's the direction, kind of, to avoid this kind of stuff in the future, would be a master drainage plan? Because it seems like, you developers, not you, but the developers come in and say, it's very piecewise. It's like, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and there's definitely no overarching authority to say, hey, this is too much, or this is going to cause problems for these guys, as a system.
Yes, overall master drainage plan would help. We're seeing growth accelerate. So would that help us keep a handle on all the areas that we're having to look at now and assess? It only would help, yes. But we realize it does take dollars. And,
okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. I know you got to go, so it's...
All right, 2.
I have a question.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify a couple of things for the record. So something that Mr. Schuer was saying. So when you look at an individual subdivision, you look at the amount of drainage that's going to result from that development, but you also look at where the water's already coming from and where it's already going to. So you do look outside the boundaries of each individual subdivision, correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And that's where I'm saying we have to understand what's happening downstream with the existing conditions.
Right.
Can we improve those?
Right.
How is the water flowing through? Where's it coming from above? And, get an understanding of, is there areas above it that we can do work in to slow water down also?
Right.
To help
So then
that
if
present.
the 40-acre farm on the west of Riley Creek, when and if that develops as a single-family development, per your presentation, you were indicating that we can create stormwater features within that development to actually slow down the rate to improve the drainage of the area. So a development on the 40-acre farm on Riley Creek won't necessarily increase the problem. It could actually improve the problem. Is that correct?
It will improve it, yes,
Okay.
because as I showed on that graph, we're going to move that time of concentration. We're going to slow the time
Slow the
that
water
peak
down,
hits.
right, okay.
And that then will decrease the overall discharge.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and Scott, you do have to go. Appreciate the presentation. I'm sure there'll be some follow-up questions, but we'll tackle those later. Okay, we jumped down to 8.2. We're going to jump back up to number 4 on the agenda. Read and approve the minutes from our January 18th meeting. We don't normally do that. Yeah. No. So they were emailed to everyone. If everyone's had a chance to look at the minutes from the January 18th meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion approved.
Second.
Any comments? All in favor of approving the minutes from January 18th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Unanimous? Okay. Reports from officers and staff. Mary, do you have anything for us?
Yes, just briefly. We are still working through the Think 2040 comprehensive plan process. Staff has reviewed a draft of the plan with the consultants to check for accuracy of data and to fill out some holes that they had. We anticipate that the first formal draft of the comprehensive plan for the public's review will be out in the next several weeks. So we will be running that through the public for their comments as well as through the assigned steering committee. So just a progress update on that project.
Is there any chance that the Planning Commission could get a look at that before it goes fully public?
I anticipate as soon as it's done, as for formal first draft one, it'll be released.
A few weeks out there. We're talking April, May timeframe? Or soon?
No, first week of March.
Okay, March, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that first draft. Anything else?
No, sir.
Okay. No old business. We'll move on to new business. First item is going to be continued to next month, the Coppers Creek Estate, so that's moving on. Second item is the Roden Minor Subdivision, 3 lots from an existing 3.34 acre property. This is a public hearing, so we'll open our public hearing. And first, if we could hear from the applicant. Is he available? Thank you. Please state your name and your address.
Connell Roden, 738 Old Seminary Road, Manchester, Tennessee.
Okay. Well, I guess tell us about your project here, Mr. Roden.
Yeah, we have about a 4.52 acre lot that's had some really good soil tests done, and so we're looking into to split those into three lots from one. So two 8.1 lots on the front, and then one 7.1, I believe, in the back.
3 possible home sites?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess staff report, please, on this one.
Can you see if there's any comment from the public, please?
Sorry, I should get this order down. Any comments from the public on this proposed development? Seeing none, staff comments, please.
Okay, thank you. As Mary Samaniego, senior planner, as the applicant stated, this property is on the 4700 block of Old Manchester Highway in the Coffee County urban growth boundary. It is an existing 3.34 acre site. He's proposing to create 2 lots that have frontage on Old Manchester Highway, each being 0.81 acres, and the remaining lot in the rear is going to be 1.72, and that is considered a flag lot. It meets all of the standards for the RS1 zoning district for Coffee County. Septic sites have been preliminarily approved by TDEC. There are no variance requests, and there's only one small typo that needs to be added to the plat pending approval. So saying that, staff recommends approval of the final plat subject to my comments.
Okay. If I could get a motion so we can discuss this.
I move we approve.
Thank you. First and second. Discussion. Any discussion on this proposed development? Seeing none. I do have a question. I'm curious what the access roads coming off of Old Manchester Highway. Is that something that you've already thought through? I can't tell from this drawing what your driveways will look like, how that might be set up.
Well, there is a ditch along, culvert ditch that will access the property, and we'll go through the proper sizing of the culverts to access to the house as usual.
Okay. If there's no questions, I guess I'll call for a vote. All in favor of this development, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say nay. None opposed, unanimous. Well, good deal. Well, congratulations and good luck on your development.
Sir?
Other new business. Mary has prepared a year in review looking into the past, I guess. Actually,
Yes, at your last meeting in January, I had presented to you the year in review for 2021 as far as rezoning cases, variances, text amendment, zoning verification letters, home occupations, commercial site plans, number of subdivisions, number of new residential lots created, as well as new home permits. At that January meeting, you had inquired as to if I could go a couple years back to 2018 and provide those numbers as well to provide some comparison. So those that data is provided on pages 10 and 11 in a table format, as well as a line chart for your review and consideration. That's all I have.
okay, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the extra work.
You're welcome.
Does any commission members have any thoughts on this data? Any discussion? ...2021 was certainly a pickup in new lots, but not really a pickup in new house permits, so... Mary, I just off the cuff, but in so far, in we were only 7-8 weeks into this year, but have we had any new house permits in 2022 that you're aware of? Any
Yes,
sense
sir.
of that?
I can't name the
Okay.
address off the top of my head, but I know I've signed off on at least one.
Okay, just kind
Given
of
this
steady.
time of year, it's still winter, so
Yeah,
it's not really yet.
not a good time to build.
Right.
Nina's got at least 10, so that's a good pace. If there's 10 in just 6 weeks, that's a good pace. Okay.